Hi, and welcome. This is a Share Your Story personal essay writing workshop. We're going to be doing some writing, talking about writing, thinking about our own journeys with MS and overcoming MS. I am Regina Beach. I am the Trust and Community Fundraising Manager for Overcoming MS, and I am also an OMSer myself. So I've written several essays about my own journey with my diagnosis and finding the OMS program, and I'll share links to those if you're interested in reading my work at the end. But I'm really excited that you've come to learn about personal essay writing and do a little bit of creative writing today. This is an interactive workshop, so you will need either a notebook and a pen or a blank document to type in, because we'll be pausing a bit, reflecting, writing, generating some lists, writing some anecdotes over the course of this workshop. So first things first, you came to a personal essay writing workshop. Let's talk about what is a personal essay. It is a story about a real person, typically the writer, and their experience, and it shares something hyper specific from your own life to illuminate something universal for the readers. Personal essays aren't just a story about what happened to you, but also how it affected you and how you've changed. Typically, in a personal essay, you'll note that you start out one place and then there's some kind of growth, some kind of change, and you end up somewhere new, sometimes unexpected, or sometimes it's pretty linear, but we always like to highlight how you've grown, how you've changed, or what's different about you at the end of the writing. So we're going to jump right in and start with a 5-minute timeline exercise. And this is going to just give us some anecdotes or some pieces, parts of your history that you can then turn into an essay of your choosing. So don't worry about writing full sentences and don't worry about fleshing out any of these. You're just going to write into each or whichever of these topics spark your interest. So maybe you write about your first symptoms, your diagnosis, how you found overcoming MS program, what's your current situation, or maybe you're writing about what's to come, what are your future goals, what's happening in the future. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes and put myself on mute, but I will come back when the timer is done. And like I said, have fun and don't worry so much about writing anything eloquent or beautiful at this step. We're just making a timeline. All right, here we go. That was 5 minutes. Hopefully you have a pretty good list of all of the things that have happened to you since your first symptoms. So hang on to that list because we will refer to it again. Our second exercise is to make a word bank. So maybe you're going to write down medical terms that you associate with MS, images that you have, scents that you can remember, specific sounds, or maybe you're talking about a specific time period. Maybe you were diagnosed in the early 2000s in cassette tapes, AOL, certain elections, certain events really remind you of this particular place and time. Or maybe there's some interesting words that you've come across that you want to jot down. And so go back through your timeline and you can just make yourself a little list. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to be in any kind of order, and come up with your word bank of interesting words that relate to those points on your timeline. I'm going to put the timer on for 3 minutes and then we'll meet back here. See you then. That's time. And of course, you can press pause, do what you need to do, and continue these lists as with as much time as you need. But When we first start to write anything, the blank page can feel really daunting. So it's nice to start with some pre-writing so you don't feel overwhelmed or anxious by the prospect of writing, 500 or 1,000 words. It's just giving yourself these little anecdotes that you can piece together and string together really nicely. Um, so maybe for this next writing exercise, you might want to follow your curiosities, joys, and struggles. How has MS picked things that you maybe used to like that you don't anymore, that are a struggle, or maybe it has allowed you to find new joys and things that you never would have explored before. Maybe you want to write about things you notice or memorable meals you've eaten, places you would like to return to, people you've loved who've helped you along the way. Or maybe you have some questions that haunt you that you want to write into. Maybe you want to write about the things you detest or moments that changed you, who you are, where you come from, or why you look at the world the way you do. Obviously, 5 minutes isn't long enough to write into all of these, but hopefully there's one or two that pick your interest and you say, yeah, I have something to say about that. So choose one. It can be related to your word bank or your timeline, or it could be something new. Don't try to force it. It's okay if things are feel a little bit disjointed at this point. There's no pressure to make it cohesive yet. I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes and then I will see you back here. Welcome back. Hopefully you found that enjoyable and you had 5 minutes worth of things to write and hopefully more. As you look at either what you've just written or your word bank or your timeline, something will probably jump out at you. What is this one moment that changed you? What's the moment when something shifted? So, what would you like your essay to be about? Find that one key thing. Sometimes the smallest things make the greatest essays. And sometimes when we think too big, if we're just thinking about my entire MS journey, there's too much to make it really granular and really special. So think about narrowing it down. And so in that moment that changed you, maybe even close your eyes if you want to really get into this space, this time, and think for yourself, do you taste anything? What do you see right in front of you? In this moment, is there anyone in the room with you, or maybe you're outside? Is there anyone nearby? What's that person wearing? What's their expression like? What emotion are they displaying? Are they saying anything to you? Are you saying anything back? What's that dialogue like? Do you hear anything? Is there the whistle of a kettle, a truck going by? Is the TV on? Are you touching anything? Maybe the back of a chair, your shirt against your skin, your feet against the floor, or maybe it's the lack of sensation that is striking this situation. What is this moment like? Sit with it, hold on to it. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you can open them back up. And we're going to write into that moment. We're going to write into a first draft of that moment that changed you. So you've done some research by looking back into your own memories and writing your word bank and writing your timeline. But you might want to take some of those notes, or maybe there's something, oh, I can't quite remember. Just make yourself a little note and go look it up later. There's no reason to get bogged down in research now when you're drafting. You can always add in those extra details or those extra facts in your second draft. And so the first step in drafting is really writing down everything you remember or you know about your topic in kind of a loose way. So again, almost every single piece of writing goes through multiple drafts. Don't get caught up on trying to make your first draft perfect. Once you have finished, it's a great idea to reread it slowly and out loud, and then highlight the best bits. Yeah, this is definitely staying. And then you can toss some of the things that maybe don't quite sound the way you want to. But for now, we're just going to be free, let it go, take those memories, that moment, and put it down onto paper. You ready? I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. But again, if you want to pause and take longer, that's absolutely fine. I'll see you back here in a little bit. That's 5 minutes. So hopefully the beginnings of a first draft, it often takes people a long time to write a complete first draft. But with what you have, we're going to take 3 minutes to reread what you've written slowly and out loud to yourself. There's something really different about hearing your own writing off the page versus just reading silently on the page. And you might find some things that really tickle your ears that say, oh, that's really good. You might find some things that when you read it out loud, you're like, oh, actually, that's not very clear, or I need to switch those words around, or I actually know a better way of saying that. So I'm going to set the timer, take 3 minutes, and really reread out loud what you've written. And you can make yourself a few notes or circle some things, highlight whatever you need to do to just get into your work and see it from a little bit different perspective. All right, see you back here in 3 minutes. That was 3 minutes. Hopefully you found that interesting and not too difficult or not too cringeworthy. Sometimes it's hard to read our own writing, but that's the step in drafting. Nothing comes out perfect the first time, which is why we edit and piece things together. So a lot of personal essays will start out with a beginning scene, something that really sets the where and the when of the essay. And then in the middle of the essay, there'll be that moment of change, which we wrote into a little bit earlier, something that really clicked or something that shifted or a mindset or an ability or whatever it was. And then there's an ending scene, something that ties it all up in a bow and says, here's how I'm different, or here's the outcome, or this is what happens, and this is where I hope to go in the future. So as you're editing and putting these various parts together to complete your essay, some key tips include show, don't tell, which means instead of saying it was a bright summer day, you could say something like, I had to squint because the glare off of the windows was so bright as I left the house and in the hot weather, something that is just a little more interesting and really gives like the details of the scene instead of big platitudes about the scene. Adding dialogue can be really helpful as well. If in your visualization you had that conversation with another person, write it down. That can be really interesting. And even if you have to fudge the truth a little, that's okay. People who write memoir and personal essays and do life writing always have to fudge a little bit because most of us don't have that very perfect memory that remembers word by word what was said. Often we piece together and say, okay, I know this is kind of what the conversation was about, and that's perfectly okay. This is your story and you get to tell it from the best of your memory's ability, and that's exactly what we're doing. So don't worry about whether it's 100% accurate. And it's also helpful to think about what moment illustrates best what you're trying to say. So whatever it is, I was writing a little bit about the first time I ever used a wheelchair. And so thinking about, okay, which key scene illustrates how that was like really emotional and also really helpful for me will help versus just telling the entire story of how I decided to do this and what happened. Zoning in on that exact little moment sometimes can be even more powerful. And of course, adding our sensory details. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you taste? What did you feel? All of those help put your reader right in your shoes and really help them empathize with you as the writer and really follow along with your story. So as you develop your draft, these things can be really helpful. And just ask yourself, okay, does this sentence or does this paragraph do one of these key things? And if it does, great, leave it in. And if it doesn't, think, okay, how can I add something to make it either have more rich details or turning something into a show instead of a tell, or really driving this narrative from the beginning, the moment of change, and the end. And once you have your draft, it's time for revising. And like I said before, all writers revise. There is not a single writer who writes a perfect first draft. So it's likely that you will write more than one draft and maybe many drafts. So when you're revising, think about the takeaway. How are you rewarding the reader's attention for reading your story? What's the revelation that you had that might resonate with somebody else who's reading about your experience? And a really important thing, sometimes we want to start way before the beginning of our story with a lot of extra backstory, and sometimes that's not necessary. Sometimes it's better to jump into the first paragraph and let that set the scene, just giving a little bit of detail of where and when we are, and then going off to the races and really diving straight into your narrative. So I wanted to leave you with this quote from Joan Didion. She was an American essayist and novelist who had MS. She has since passed away, but this quote is from an interview she did with the Paris Review in 2006. And she said, "You get the sense that it's possible simply to go through life noticing things and writing them down, and that this is okay. It's worth doing. That the seemingly insignificant things that most of us spend our days noticing are really significant, have meaning, and tell us something." So all of your little noticings, the insignificant moments, sometimes those are actually, when looking in hindsight, become the most meaningful. So as you develop your story and you finished a draft, if you would like help editing your work, I would be more than happy to give you some feedback. I promise it will be gentle and it will be positive. You're welcome to email me. My email is regina@overcomingms.org. And if you have something finished that you would like published on the OMS blog, the digital team is looking for finished essays between 500 and 800 words. And so if you would like your story to be shared, please email digital@overcomingms.org. Include a non-blurry photo, or if you don't have a photo, that's fine, because a stock photo can be used if you don't want to submit a photo. But some people like to have a picture that illustrates their story, and you're more than welcome to submit that. And please include a one-sentence bio. If you do not want your name associated with your story, that's fine. You can choose to remain anonymous, and there's no pressure to disclose who you are. If you want to keep your writing private, that's fine. And some people, rather than writing, prefer to speak or to record themselves. So if you would rather record a 1 to 2 minute video, you can email digital@overcomingms.org to receive a full brief about how to set up your recording device and what should be in that video. Thank you so much for attending today's workshop. I hope you found it valuable. I hope you had fun doing some writing, and I hope I get to read some of your essays as they come in. Again, I'm Regina Beach. It's been my pleasure to guide you through this workshop today. See you next time. Bye.